Hello everyone. And welcome to All Because Two People Fell in Love. On the left is Rhiannon. She was born in St. John's, Newfoundland in September of 1984. A sweet princess little brat with an attitude too big for her britches. But isn't she so adorable in that cute little dress? Later on she grew up. Well, a little. That's her after graduating grade 8. On the right is Uriel. He was born in Windsor, Ontario in March 1969. A child with a dream. His head is, well, still in the clouds. But look at those handsome little baby cheeks. His dream started becoming real when he was a teenager. He was in a play that was in junior high school. That was on TV. In the middle at the bottom is just after they met in Edmonton, Alberta in 2005. Or, aren't they so adorable together? Rhiannon and Uriel met at a nightclub in Edmonton. It was called New City Suburbs and the Liquid Lounge. It is no longer that today. But when it was on the corner of 101st Street and Jasper Avenue. Today, in 2019, it is now completely new buildings. If you find State and Main and Williams Engineering, that is where it used to be. This is Rhiannon around the time that she had met Uriel. When she first walked into the bar, her eyes were all over Uriel. They were not only blue, but they sparkled with interest. She was very shy and not sure how to go about meeting him, so she kept to herself for quite a while. With a smile like that, who knows what she may have been thinking in that moment that she laid eyes on him? This is Uriel. Don't let his appearance fool you. He is actually a very spiritual and kind-hearted man. He used to be a go-go dancer in a cage at different clubs. He may look scary to some and dresses gothic, but he is a very old soul, wise and more of a mystic. He is not only a musician, but also does tarot, crystal healing, and somehow knows some things from the other side. Rhiannon walked into the bar wearing a very long dress, but not for long. It was about to get shorter. Uriel and Rhiannon didn't know it, but they had the same friends. And those friends realized that they both were single at the same time. Since they all knew Rhiannon was much too shy, they just sat her down next to Uriel on the club's concert stage. She stared at him for what seemed like an eternity. It felt like forever. Finally Uriel stared into her deep blue eyes and said, "Hi there." She just kept staring like a deer in headlights. Then she stared at him some more. Finally her conversation was like, hey. Well, hey. Hey, yeah. She was so nervous. Then she went back to her staring. Uriel sat closer to her, and put one arm around her to talk, but then this happened. Her girlfriends came by and snatched her away. They brought her back shortly after that. Emphasis on the shortly. Her dress was now at only half the length of what it was before. They had cut it down significantly. It was a lot. You could now see her knees, where before this you could only see her shoes. This time she stared at Uriel a shorter time than before. She was finally brave enough to speak to him, but then this happened. Her girlfriends came by and snatched her away. Again. This kept happening, several times, throughout the night. I guess her friends were trying to get her lucky. They were trying to score her a man. But Uriel was much more a gentleman than that. He made sure to stand behind Rhiannon from then on, so others would not have to get a show. Her dress was eventually so short later in the evening, it was now showing too much. Let's just say, it didn't leave much to the imagination. She had to firmly ask her friends to stop. Another very polite friend offered to stand in front of her as well. It became a seriously short dress. Uriel does not know how Rhiannon pulled it off to this day, but she followed him home, and still won't leave. After 14 years from the night that she first met him at the bar, she still won't go home. Rhiannon had quite a lot to drink that night. Her first words the next morning were, "Wow. This wasn't a one-night stand? This is the real thing? I thought I was dreaming. But you are here next to me. You are really here." Then she just cuddled up closer to him even more. Then she drifted off back to sleep. She was finally happy. And so was he. Uriel and Rhiannon miss this nightclub so much. They used to have so much fun there every weekend. They miss so many great friends. Rhiannon would like to thank Tabs, Fiona, Jessie, and many others for introducing them. Here now is a short clip of what the club was like 14 years ago. New City Suburbs was a very interesting club. There were people dressed gothic, people dressed punk, people dressed emo, people dressed alternative, baby dolls, cross-dressers, vampires, witches, and yes, even people dressed up as furry animals. The way most of the people danced was like martial arts played in fast forward. It was quite aggressive. The music was electronic body music, rave, alternative, dark wave, electropop, gothic, metal, and industrial styles. This club was very unique in the fact they had bands often that no other bars in Edmonton ever had. We are talking about bands from Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, and places from all over the world. They had bands that most people would rarely see in Canada. The sound was amazing in surround sound, the lights shows were amazing, the regular people and friends were amazing. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for Rhiannon and Uriel. An experience they will never forget. Sometimes you just know. Not even 1 month after they had met, they were already engaged to be married. Uriel was very old-fashioned and went and asked her parents for permission. Her mother was so excited. She said, "He's a catch. If you don't marry him, then I will." Uriel blindfolded Rhiannon at her mother's home, then with her blind, placed an engagement ring on her finger. She was led blindly around the house, with Mum and Uriel, showing everyone the beautiful engagement ring. Finally back in the kitchen, he went on one knee, and took off the blindfold. They both knew they had found the one. Of course she said yes. Definitely yes. Uriel and Rhiannon were only together 4 months before they got married on May 28, 2005. The fact that they are still together after 14 years, is proof enough that it worked, and they still very much love each other today. True love is hard to find, they say. But when you find it, you grab tight, and never let go. In 2003, 2 years before Uriel and Rhiannon had met, Uriel spent most of a summer in hospitals having 3 major heart operations. 2 stents were put into his descending aorta. On the second surgery he almost died. Once those 2 surgeries were complete, he underwent open heart surgery to repair his mitral valve, and to put in a metal artificial aortic valve. These are things, and many other surgeries, keep happening to Uriel, because he was born with a genetic, incurable, disorder of the connective tissues of his body. It is called Marfan syndrome. Due to Uriel's need for constant monitoring, and tests, for the rest of his life, Rhiannon and him had to leave all family and friends behind in Edmonton, Alberta, and move south to where they had easier access to his surgeons and other specialists. They left Edmonton the next year after they were married, later on in 2006. They were now completely on their own, with no family, and no friends. One of the places they lived for quite some time was down in southwest Alberta, in a city called Lethbridge. A few years later in 2010, they then moved to southeast Alberta, and lived in the city of Medicine Hat. In the 5th month of 2011, tragedy struck hard. Rhiannon's mother passed away at the young age of 50. She had been battling for years with lung disease. As if things were not bad enough already, after 6 years of seeing specialists and doctors, Rhiannon discovered that she could not have children. She had too many health issues in the way, causing it to be impossible. Rhiannon became very distant, empty, and depressed. She even had to spend a short time in hospital to deal with all this loss. Uriel had to do something to help. He found and moved them to an apartment, where they not only had a much bigger place, in a good neighborhood, but they were allowed to have pets as well. Because he loved his wife so much, and wanted to somehow fill her emptiness, he searched the world over for the most purest breed of cat. Not only a cat, but a polka-dotted cat. The same ones the pharaohs had thousands of years ago. He bought Rhiannon 2 Egyptian mouse cats. Yes, they were very expensive. But he told her, "Now you have a family. These cats are larger than average ones. They also can run 35 miles an hour, and jump 7 feet. They also make goat-like sounds like ma-ah-ah-ah. They are very smart, and Uriel taught them to fetch, sit pretty, roll over, play dead, and many other wonderful tricks. This has brought so much love and joy back into Rhiannon's life. She was so happy. Once again. These girls are so affectionate, and demand her attention. She is now their forever mama. The smallest one's name is Mayot Kepri, and the larger one is Nefertari City. Eventually Rhiannon and Uriel tried living in Calgary where all the specialists were. But the rents were ridiculously too high. The average one-bedroom was double the rent of what they were used to paying. So that only lasted a year, and they had to get the hell out while they still could. They moved to Cochrane, Alberta in May of 2018. They love it there, because they now live in a 2-bedroom apartment that is halfway between Calgary where the specialists are, and the Rocky Mountains to the west. It also has a small old western town feel to it. It is also Alberta's top 5 safest city. To make it even more special, Rhiannon and Uriel can see the mountains from their living room window. They made a friend there, and go into the mountains almost every week. They both just love nature. This place feels to them like home. Rhiannon was unfortunately born with a mental health disorder, known as bipolar personality disorder. It can, if not properly medicated, cause her to get extreme mania, or on the flip side, severe depression. Sometimes back and forth between the two, several times a day. During the mania moments of her life, she would experience moments of pure euphoria. Sometimes higher than a person on drugs. All this created from her own mind. If it goes too high, it can cause her to become very irritable, and in rare cases violent to herself and others. This mania can also cause her to have an exaggerated self-esteem, in either a good or bad way. At times this has caused Rhiannon to go as much as 3 days without sleep sometimes. During manic moments, she would become very talkative. She could talk the ears off of a stone statue. Her mind starts racing around with thoughts becoming a blur. She no longer can concentrate on just one, but thousands of thoughts hitting her every second. This makes her so distracted that she no longer can pay attention to what is going on around her. She loses touch with all reality. In rare cases, this can even cause strange behavior that even she would not agree with, such as sleeping with a stranger and not knowing why, or getting involved with the wrong people, places, and things that she would normally have nothing to do with. It can literally make a person spiral out of control if not properly monitored and medicated by a specialist doctor, often with lifelong and painful consequences. On the depressive side of things, if not properly medicated, Rhiannon can become depressed for many days in a row. This makes her lose interest in just about everything. Even her most enjoyable hobbies just become a ho-hum. Who cares? Depression can cause both extreme weight loss or even extreme weight gain. On some days she will go most of the day without eating. Other days she could eat you out of house and home. When she becomes this depressed, she sometimes will sleep for entire days and not want to get out of bed. She can at times get unrealistic feelings of guilt and worthlessness. In extreme cases she has had to have hospitalizations to prevent her from harming herself. The sad reality about both sides of this is that Rhiannon cannot do anything to stop or prevent it. Only medications can help and aid the situation. Sadly though, it is never a cure. Over time medications stop working, or your body gets used to them. Then the doctor has to find something new to prevent these episodes. During the adjustment periods, all hell can literally break loose, and it is not even Rhiannon's fault. Sadly, Rhiannon also has borderline personality disorder. This disorder can cause her to have an unrealistic fear of Uriel leaving her, even when nothing is wrong. Always being afraid of being left completely alone and abandoned. Rhiannon is very unstable in her relationship with Uriel. She lacks boundaries and values. She doesn't have much tolerance before becoming emotional about things. She is very impulsive, and in the past has even self-harmed herself. Uriel has to control the money, because during an impulsive episode, she could go shopping and completely rack up all the credit cards and spend all their money. Rhiannon has had to fight with eating disorders her whole life, but is doing well. This disorder can sometimes cause her to binge eat far too much food in a short period of time. Or sometimes not eat enough, and have an attitude towards food. Rhiannon has complete instability with her emotions. For Uriel, it's like living with a completely new woman every day. Sometimes the personality and mood of Rhiannon can change so drastically. It's as if he never knew her at all, and has to learn to get used to whoever she is that particular day. In extreme cases, this can happen several times in a single day. In the 14 years they have been married, Rhiannon has lost control a few times where hospitalization was needed so that Rhiannon would not take her own life. Borderline personality disorder leaves a person feeling empty and full of meaningless guilt. When Rhiannon's emotions get too out of hand, she becomes violent and angry. In rare cases it will cause her to start cutting, slashing, and burning herself. Sadly, she has too many scars on her body to remind her of those difficult times in her life. Every day Rhiannon suffers from moments of dissociation. Seconds where she just stares off into space, and nobody is home. Because of all these symptoms, she has a very bad self-image, and often thinks slowly of herself. There is nothing that can be done to cure this disorder, but medication is a help in making these episodes happen less frequent. This is an everyday struggle for her and Uriel. Luckily she found a man that understands this is not her fault, and stands firmly by her side. Rhiannon also suffers from general anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder as well. If you are wondering how the both of them live with all this, they both would tell you it seriously is a living hell. But together, they work through it day by day. Sometimes even second to second. They look out for one another no matter what. A prime example of what can happen if these mental disorders are not monitored and controlled properly, is what happened during the year 2018. It all began when Uriel wanted to move to Cochrane, Alberta so badly, he was willing to go with, or without Rhiannon. It is rated the top 5 safest city in Alberta, and he was tired of all the drugs and violence in Medicine Hat, which at the time was rated number 19. That means the crime there was more than 3 times worse than Cochrane. They lived in an apartment building in Medicine Hat that was so wild with parties and violence, they couldn't even get proper sleep at night. People even died from knife attacks and drug overdoses. The police were there several times a day, kicking in someone's door. On weekends there were parties so wild that many windows of the building were completely shattered. It truly was that bad. He felt they both deserved to live somewhere peaceful. Rhiannon and Uriel started having many fights after this. She wanted to stay because she made many friends there. He wanted to go for their sanity and well-being. This was the beginning of Rhiannon's mental state spiraling down slowly out of control. Eventually they did move in May 2018 to Cochrane together. But her mental illness had already started growing worse. All the stress was taking its toll. Both Uriel wanting to move, and the state of living in a violent apartment in Medicine Hat for a year was too much for her. Things were about to go wrong. Very wrong. In fact, it almost completely ended their marriage. To make things even worse, those open heart and stent surgeries Uriel had back in 2003 where he almost died, left him with severe nerve damage in his left groin. In the summer of 2018, his reproductive organs stopped working completely. He no longer could be with Rhiannon in an intimate way. That part of his body had become completely dead. They tried Viagra, Cialis, injections, and all sorts of medications that were very expensive. Nothing worked. They did not find out until later in April 2019, that Uriel will require surgical penile implants if he is ever to be with his wife Rhiannon again, in an intimate way. He will be seeing a surgeon in October of 2019. So there is some hope for the future. But at this point they did not know this, and it put a very severe strain on their marriage not being able to be with one another in that way. Rhiannon had needs that Uriel could not help her with. Months went by, and it just made things worse. With Rhiannon now completely in a manic episode caused by all the stress, and her mental state breaking down severely, she no longer was herself. Even Uriel didn't recognize or know her anymore. After 13 years of being by his side, she popped a question he thought he would never hear from her. Since they could no longer be intimate together, she wanted an open relationship. She wanted to be allowed to be intimate with other men. This was definitely something she would never do if she was in her right mind. The Rhiannon that Uriel knew for 13 years was now completely gone. Her mental illness has completely taken over. Uriel did not know what to do. He now was in such a state of shock that his mental well-being was deteriorating as well. He loved her so much he just wanted her happy. So he just let her do whatever it was going to be. He wasn't exactly happy about it, but did not know what else to do at that moment. Rhiannon slept with a stranger off the internet. He raped her repeatedly, and forced her to do unspeakable things. He left her with bruises all over her body that took weeks to go away. He got away with this and police could do nothing, because Rhiannon had no name, address, or phone number for this man. To show just how out of character, and out of sanity Rhiannon was at the time, she actually went and did this at least another 6 times with various men. Some more than once. Her mania had now become a sex addiction. Being with strangers had become like a drug to her. Her new state of mind could not get enough. She was so euphoric, full of mania, that there was no coming down from it without professional help. Uriel suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, and the things Rhiannon was not putting him through, was triggering memories severely. He was reliving events from his childhood, such as times he himself was physically and sexually abused growing up. He was remembering his previous 2 failed marriages. He was remembering the 3 children he never knew, and never got to see any of them grow up. His ex-wife used to cheat on him a lot, and with one of their children, she is not even fully sure who the father is. His ex-wife even lost their children forever to the system because of sexual abusing them with a new man in her life who was a pedophile. Now Uriel's mental state was completely trashed as well. This was too much for him. He was completely broken from this point onward. One night Rhiannon got the stupid idea to crush up her pain medications and breath them in through her nose. Why did she do such a stupid thing? Who knows, but it happened. What was even worse, is somehow she convinced Uriel to do the same. His mind was too broken to care. Uriel has never done any kind of street drug in his life. This was something he would usually tell someone where to go and how to get there. But for some reason on this night, it happened. Later that evening Rhiannon got sick and tried to go to the bathroom to throw up. She never made it there. She fell face first into the bathtub. She then slid down it slowly and went into an overdose. Uriel ran in when he heard the loud ring of her head hitting the tub. She was near death. He had to smack her around and throw water on her to get her to wake up. They both spent the entire next day in the emergency. She had a severe concussion, and Uriel was shocked to learn that this even caused him some irreversible heart damage. Rhiannon was in and out of emergencies over the next few days because it was that bad. She almost died. Both of them were very sick and nauseated for the next 3 days as the drugs had to leave their systems. They are both lucky to still be here today. The hospital sent them home with a Narcan kit. It really was that close for both of them. Luckily, they both are still here today. Uriel hit rock's bottom. He could not believe all that was going on. Rhiannon sleeping around, him not able to be with her sexually himself, her almost dying, the memories of the past traumas he's been through, and knowing he hit rock bottom and even did something very risky and stupid himself, causing irreversible heart damage. He had enough and was now planning to get the hell out and leave Rhiannon forever. One day Uriel took himself to the emergency room to ask for help in leaving her. He quickly learned that he had nowhere to go, and that leaving her would make him a homeless person. The police would just take him out of Cochrane, and drop him off in Calgary at a shelter. After a few weeks he would be on his own, sleeping on the busy streets, in a city of 1.2 million people. Without an address, he wouldn't even get his disability checks. He would have to eat at soup kitchens, and do whatever he could to survive. Without an address, he would not even have the ability to get his medications that are keeping him alive with all his health issues. Uriel was trapped with nowhere to go. Once Rhiannon discovered his rings on a table and knew he had left, she literally ran all over the city looking for him. She found him in the emergency care center. She begged him to come home. Since he had nowhere to go, of course he went with her. He was not happy about it, but what else could he do? For most of the year 2018, Uriel stayed on his own side of the bed. He didn't talk much to Rhiannon. In fact, he spent most nights crying and screaming himself to sleep. Because Rhiannon did actually love him deeply, she snuggled him into her bosom, and rocked him to sleep often like a baby. He was so completely broken, it even scared her. For most of that year, Rhiannon couldn't even get Uriel to accept his wedding rings back. He would just scream at her in a rage, about what she has done. For quite some time, he loathed and hated being in the same room as her. But things were about to change. Not only change, but completely for the better. Rhiannon finally woke up from her mania, and came back to her senses. She was mostly herself, once again. She had to fix this, or lose Uriel forever. In all of Uriel's frustrations, he made Rhiannon an ultimatum. He told her she only had a few months to get herself together, or he would be leaving no matter what. She went to mental health and got herself a counselor. She started seeing her often. She also got herself a psychiatrist, and started getting her medications adjusted, and her moods better under control. Since there were no 12-step programs in Cochrane, she joined an online meeting for people in recovery. I'm pleased to say she has not touched any drugs ever since then, to this very day. She now has several months of clean time. She also joined a support group every Thursday, and has made many coffee friends there. A few of them even exchanged phone numbers, and call each other for support if in a crisis. Rhiannon got rid of all the bad habits caused by her earlier mania episode, and then things started getting better between her and Uriel at this point. Their lives started being more the way it used to be. Rhiannon even found ways to be intimate with Uriel, even though they couldn't do what couples usually could do. It was a new discovery for them both. They basically had to date, and get to know one another all over again. A lot of walls Rhiannon had most of their marriage were broken down now as well, and she was more open with Uriel. As you can see in these last two photos, they were starting to fall in love again, and smile once more. One day Rhiannon asked Uriel, what would it take for you to forgive me, or for you to at least be okay with us starting over from scratch? Uriel replied, I'd like you to take a sheet of paper, and make it into a left side, and a right side. On one side I'd like you to list out all the ways you have hurt me, and explain how you would feel if it happened to you. On the other side, I'd like you to come up with your own solution to how you can fix that issue between us. When you are done, come talk to me. To Uriel's surprise, not only did she do that, but she did much more. The first thing she did, is tell Uriel that she was sorry, and made a public apology, where she admitted the wrongs, that she was a recovering addict, needed help, and begged Uriel to take her back on live video. Then she made a second public video called Getting My Shit Together, where she admitted all her issues, what specifically she had done to hurt Uriel over the years of their marriage, and what she was going to do about it. She made this video to inspire others needing help from mental issues and addictions to reach out also. She then told Uriel that since they were technically sort of separated for a year, she wants to get remarried. She wants to throw him the wedding they never had. Rhiannon knew the old rings meant nothing to Uriel after she had severely hurt him. She said she was getting custom rings made with Celtic designs, diamonds, and his birthstone, which is aquamarine. Not just a few stones, but a band of stones that go all around his finger. These wedding bands were worth around $2,141. She told him, I love you to the moon and back, but if you asked I'd go even farther. You are worth far more to me. You are my angel. You are my knight in shining armor, you are my everything. Uriel looked at her list of things she planned to do, and was completely blown away. She was planning a full vow renewal. She was fully rededicating her life to him. Uriel and Rhiannon worked together to plan out what they wanted to do for their vow renewal, and started preparing invitations to the guests they wanted to invite. They chose Saturday, July 6, 2019 as their wedding date. This picture is the first page of the invitations that they sent out. The page on the left you see now, was the left inside page of the invitations. It had a list of the daily activities that they planned out. The day would start with everyone meeting at their apartment around 8:30 a.m. Everyone would then carpool with as little vehicles as possible to reduce the cost of driving fuel. They would then drive out to Kananaskis country, to Barrier Lake. There is a raised point of land that goes out towards the water. They want to use that as the aisle for their wedding and for the Celtic vows that each of them has written for the other. After leaving this destination, they will drive to Mount Lorette Bonds. That they plan to have a Victorian Alice in Wonderland picnic with their guests. They will have a table all decorated whimsical, as well as costumes for themselves and the guests. Rhiannon will be Alice, in Victorian clothing and even a parasol. Uriel will be the Mad Hatter, in a Victorian top hat and a red velvet suit with long tails. Some of the guests will be the Cheshire Cat, the Late Rabbit, and the Drunken Mouse. There will be all sorts of food and treats as well. After the tea party, they will be driving to the Kananaskis Lodge. There, they have glass railings along mountain cliff sides, for panoramic views of the mountains, and photo shoots of the wedding party. After this location they will drive for about 1 hour deep into the mountains, to the Kananaskis Lakes. These are the highest mountains in the area, and are even covered in glaciers. The water there is a beautiful aquamarine blue. There is both a lower lake, as well as a much larger upper lake. This is a place they are hoping to get great photos. They are hoping to put a large over 30-inch photo on their apartment wall of the event and experience. After the day out in the mountains is over, they hope to be back home in Cochrane by 6 p.m. They will say goodbye to their guests at that time. Then Uriel and Rhiannon, alone, will go across the street to an authentic Italian restaurant for a romantic dinner together. There will be pastas, soups, salads, and definitely wine. Lots of wine. Then the two will stumble home for the night. Here is the right inside page of the invitations, with a picture of Rhiannon and Uriel announcing they are getting remarried. This is the back outside page telling guests they hope to hear back and see them all there. They had little slips inside the cards where guests can circle if they were going or not. They put all this into gold-edge marbled envelopes and sealed them with gold stars. They then mailed them out to their guests and waited for them to respond. Once the invitations were out, Rhiannon and Uriel received very few responses back. Many people's lives were just too busy for them to be able to go. Some lived far away, and just could not afford to go. So in total there were only 6 people saying they would go. Including the bride and groom, the total people going will only be 8 people. So yes, it is going to be a very small and intimate wedding. Rhiannon and Uriel got themselves a vow renewal certificate that they and some guests can sign to verify the event took place. They then started purchasing products and planning for their big day. The first item they got was a tiara for the bride. Then they bought a beautiful headpiece for the bride as well. Of course a bride is going to need a veil. They found these adorable jeweled gloves. They bought some tapestry pants for the groom, a silk Victorian shirt, with a cravat, and a cameo tie. Then a burgundy velvet tailcoat. Since their theme was a Victorian Alice in Wonderland wedding, they got some rabbit ears for the late rabbit. They found this beautiful cake topper at a party store. A few months later they bought the bride her dress. It was red and white with a 3.5-foot train. Because the bride's dress is strapless, and Rhiannon is very top-heavy, they had to buy her a corset, so she won't fall out of her dress. They bought a beautiful necklace and matching earrings for the bride. They bought some very large freezer packs to keep the food all cold since their wedding was all outdoors in the mountains. They bought a new 20-megapixel camera, that can also do high-definition videos. They bought several rechargeable batteries to be sure and ready for the big day. They bought the groom some very nice burgundy dress shoes. Since the groom is playing the Mad Hatter, they bought him a traditional top hat. For the Alice in Wonderland picnic, they found this beautiful place setting where the cups, plates, utensils, etc. were all Alice in Wonderland themed with all the original artwork from the 1800s. They were smart, and bought table clips in case it gets windy. They even bought a whimsical centerpiece, that they are going to fill with macaroons. They bought the bride's flower bouquet. They bought the bride a mini lace parasol. They bought the bride some high heel boots. She has to be tall enough to kiss that groom after all. They bought a slimmer belt for the groom to hold his belly in and make him look slimmer. They bought some leather strand cord, so they can braid their hair in a Celtic Viking style. They bought cat ears so a friend can be the Cheshire Cat. Rhiannon even crocheted a tail to go with it. Let's not forget some ears so a friend can be the drunken mouse. They got a camera bag to hold the large camera and all its accessories. Since they planned on lots of pictures and videos, they bought 2 very fast 64GB SD cards. And let's not forget Rhiannon's beautiful rings they finally received from the goldsmith. Uriel has the band as well, but instead of an engagement ring, he has a Celtic clad ring. They then started planning the food for the wedding. The cake will be something like this one. The whimsical tower in the middle of the table will be filled with these treats. There will be sandwiches for everyone, snack platters with meat and cheese, nacho trays with chips and dips, fruit platters with a variety of kinds, as well as a vegetable platter as well with a dip. For refreshments, there will be water provided throughout the summer day. Orange soda for those who like. cola soda for those that like, and ginger ale for those that like that. And now for the actual vow renewal day. Some dreams really do come true. For this Alice and Wonderland story, have they gone completely mad? These two, Rhiannon and Uriel, are definitely madly in love with one another, and Rhiannon definitely saved her marriage before it was too late. This story starts in a small town just 14 minutes west of Calgary, and about 30 minutes east of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. It is called Cochrane, Alberta, Canada. Rhiannon and Uriel live in a tiny 590 square foot 2-bedroom apartment in the east side of Cochrane. Their living room, on a clear day, has a view of the mountains to the southwest of them. Their home in Cochrane is in a valley completely surrounded by the Rocky Mountains to both the south and the west. As you can see by these videos and photos, they are literally in Rhiannon and Uriel's backyard. It's such a beautiful place for them to live, and they have been so much more at peace since they moved there. As you can see from these train tracks with the mountains in the back, and their apartment just a block away, they can see the mountains on a clear day from just about anywhere in town. As you can see for yourself, when you're in the middle of town, the picturesque mountains are everywhere on a clear day. It is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. That is one of the reasons Uriel and Rhiannon love this place so much. To them it is like a piece of heaven on earth. With its Old West feel, its friendly southern hospitality, low crime, and closeness to both a major medical city to the east, and nature to the west, they both found a place they can finally call home. They are both quite content and happy living there. On Friday, July 5, 2019, the day before the wedding, Rhiannon went to a spa in town to get her nails professionally done in acrylics. They were light pink with sparkles and hearts. Later on that day, Uriel braided her hair into a halo on top of her head, and braided it down the back. Uriel then wrapped her hair in red leather similar to that of Vikings long ago. On this day, Uriel also was at the spa getting his nails done as well. His were a very dark brown, with sparkly red tips, and a metal chrome strip through the center of them. Rhiannon also braided his hair down his back and wrapped it in Viking-style red leather as well. On Saturday, July 6, it was finally their vow renewal wedding day. Both Rhiannon and Uriel woke up at an early 4 a.m. Uriel got Rhiannon into her corset and squeezed her body in one hook at a time. He then got her into her dress and slowly laced up the corset back of the dress until she had a beautiful figure. This took a lot more time than they thought it would take, but they got it done. Uriel then put on her wedding gloves and laced them up with ribbons. Finally he put on her veil between her hair halo and ponytail braids. That is her in the middle in the colored picture getting ready for her wedding day. Isn't she just beautiful? Then Uriel put on her metal headpiece with rhinestones, glass teardrop beads, and 3-strand glass chain-link tassels on the 2 sides. Then on top of her head he placed a white and pink rhinestone tiara, to make her even more into the princess that she already is. Uriel then placed a multicolored glass necklace around Rhiannon's neck, as well as multicolored glass earrings onto her ears as well. These jewels may be fake, but they definitely sparkle in the light and make this bride look even more beautiful. Time was going fast. There almost wasn't time for Uriel to get ready himself, because it was taking so long to make the bride just right. There were so many pieces to her look. Finally Uriel put on the final steps of Rhiannon's look. He gave her a little makeup, put on some sticker face gems, put on her high heel boots for her, handed her her flower bouquet, and finally her parasol. This bride was finally ready to face the day that awaits her. Finally it was Uriel's time to get ready. But time was running out. He only had about half an hour to get himself ready. The bride took 2.5 hours to get her ready. Guests would be coming soon. So now Uriel was in a big rush. Everything started to go wrong. He put on his tummy wrap to hold in his diastasis recti belly. It caused him pain and discomfort, so he took it off. The stretched muscles in his belly make him look like he's pregnant, even though it's just his abdominal muscles that are weak and damaged due to his health disorders. He put on his silk shirt in a hurry, then his cravat tie. A button popped off Uriel's shirt, and now his belly was hanging out. He started to panic and was almost in tears. His mother Brenda, and his wife Rhiannon ripped the apartment apart looking for a safety pin, and finally fixed the shirt with it to keep it closed. The problems got even worse when he put on his tapestry pants. He had lost a lot of weight over the last couple of months. The pants kept falling down to the floor. They were now much too big for him. At this point Uriel completely lost it. Tears began to run down his face. He didn't know how he was going to go out for his big day like this. He started thinking he could not dress up for the occasion. All his other clothes were just sweatpants and pajama pants. What was Uriel to do? Then they got an idea. They wrapped clear packing tape tightly around his waist about 15 times. Even though he is supposed to wear his shirt tucked in, they pulled it out over the tape so you could not see it. Uriel then quickly put on his tailcoat, his dress shoes, put on some makeup and face sticker gems, and his top hat. It was an intense, insane moment getting everything together, but Uriel was now finally ready for the day as well, and just in time too. The first guests were already arriving. Rhiannon and Uriel had a very difficult time getting guests for their wedding. Some because of bad weather, some because of busy work, and some because they lived too far away. Out of the 9 guests that did promise to be there, and confirmed the previous week, only 4 people actually showed up on the day of the wedding, which was less than half of their confirmed guest list. The people who went with them on this day was Brenda, Uriel's mother, Mitchell, a friend they have known for about a year, and Jade and Jessica, which are 2 girls they met in Cochrane at a coffee shop, and then started being friends. Before leaving for the day, these 4 photographs were taken of the bride and groom on the front steps of their apartment building. At around 9 a.m., they all got into their vehicles and headed out for the day. They left Cochrane driving south on Highway 22. Then they headed west on Highway 1, which is the Trans-Canada Highway. Then they headed south on Highway 40. They followed Highway 40 until they turned right into the parking lot of Barrier Lake. This drive took them about 50 minutes. Once they were at Barrier Lake, they first took some photos of the lake and the surroundings, such as flowers, plants, and the beach. Then they took photos of the bride, the groom, and all the guests who went along with them on this wonderful day. Then everyone got back into their vehicles, and drove south down Highway 40, for about another 7 to 10 minutes. Then they drove into the parking lot of Mount Lorette Ponds. These 2 photos were taken in the parking lot. Then these photos were taken of the ponds, flowers, mountains, picnic areas, as well as all the other surroundings, to document this beautiful moment in Rhiannon and Uriel's lives. Then the photographer started taking photos of the bride and groom on bridges, docks, and other parts of the walking paths along the ponds. These were some of the most beautiful pictures captured of the day. The reflective water of the ponds just made these photos even better. Here are a few photos of Jade and Jessica. They were the ones taking most of these pictures at the Mount Lorette Ponds. Once they were done at the Mount Lorette Ponds, everyone got back in their cars, and drove another 5 minutes or so, further south, down Highway 40, to the Ribbon Creek Day Use area. Here are a few more pictures of the area where the bride and groom are going to say their vows. The groom Uriel patiently awaits for his beautiful bride. The bride Rhiannon arrives dressed to the nines. Isn't she just beautiful in that dress? It's so stunning. Their eyes meet, and the energy of their love for one another fills the air. It's so strong that everyone can feel it. Even strangers walking by on the road and wilderness trails look to see what is going on. Now it is time for this beautiful, stunning bride to walk down nature's wedding aisle. These two love each other very much. And now it is time for their ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to celebrate one of life's greatest moments and to cherish the words which shall reunite Rhiannon and Uriel in marriage once again. Marriage is the promise between two people who love each other and who trust in that love, who honor each other as individuals, and who choose to spend the rest of their lives together. This ceremony today will not create a relationship that does not already exist between the two of you. Rather, it is a symbol of how far you both have come over these past 14 years. It is a symbol of the promises you will now make to each other to continue growing stronger, not only as individuals, but as partners. No matter what challenges you may face, you now face them together. And no matter how much you succeed, you now succeed together. The love between you will rejoin you both, right here and now, again, as one. The bride and groom now have a few words to share. Rhiannon, you may now share your vows that you have written for Uriel.
I vow again to Uriel. When two people are at one in their innermost heart, they shatter even strings of iron and brass. And when two people understand each other in their innermost heart, the words are sweet and strong as fragrance of orchid. If aught must be lost, it will be my honor to yours. If one must be forsaken, it will be my soul to yours. And through death common on, giving my life to yours. I am given.
Uriel, you may now share your vows that you have written for Rhiannon.
An old Irish Celtic wedding blessing from the Irish bride. My beloved Rhiannon and Uriel, happy is the bride that rain falls upon. May your mornings bring you joy, and your evenings bring you peace. May your troubles grow fewer, and your blessings increase. May the saddest day of your future be no worse than the happiest day of your past. May your hands be forever clasped in mine in friendship, and your hearts joined together forever now. Your life is very special, and the gods and angelic beings have touched you in many ways. May their blessings rest upon you and fill all your coming days. I promise by peace and love to stand with you, heart to heart, and hand to hand, for the rest of my days. Listen, all spirits of earth, and hear me now, confirming this, my own sacred vow. I shall at each moment of our lives love you until my own dying days. Now that this vow is spoken, so shall it be true, so let it be.
So now that you two have exchanged these most sacred promises with one another, I now pronounce you reunited. Uriel, you may kiss your bride. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to reintroduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Morningstar.
Here are a few photos of the bride and groom showing off their new custom-made Celtic rings. They were designed by themselves, and then made by a goldsmith in Cochrane, Alberta. Aren't they just beautiful? They are diamond and aquamarine surround, with Celtic artwork throughout the surface and sides. Uriel also has a cladder ring. Rhiannon's center stone is a pink diamond. They are absolutely stunning. Here are a few photos of the bride by herself after the wedding. She is standing next to a babbling brook. Both Rhiannon and Uriel love nature and thought, what a better place to renew their vows. I'm sure you would agree with them if asked. After the ceremony was the signing of the vow renewal certificate. Uriel signed his name. Rhiannon signed her name. The officiant signed their name, plus 2 witnesses of the ceremony as well. Here is a photo of the actual certificate signed by all parties. The nice thing about a vow renewal is you don't need the government involved. You can print the certificate off of the internet for free and print it out. You don't have to pay and hire an official officiant, but can just have a friend do it for you. As long as you have signed witnesses of the event, it becomes a legal document that the said ceremony did take place. And now it is time for the Alice in Wonderland Mad Hatter's Tea Party. The luncheon was spread out across the table with all the food that was provided by Cochrane Save On Foods. The guests gathered together for a photo before the meal. The Dormouse, the White Rabbit, and the Cheshire Cat were all there. And of course Alice and the Mad Hatter. The mouse was eyeing up the food with anticipation. Then everyone set up for the cake cutting ceremony. There were 2 tiers of cake. The top one was a triple berry sponge cake with whipped icing. It was topped with real fruit, and even had layers of real fruit inside. The bottom tier of the cake was a 2-layer slab cake. One slab was vanilla, while the other was chocolate. For the filling was real fruits of various sorts in chunks. Then it all was topped with a buttercream icing. Of course, to finish it off there was a bride and groom figurine in one corner. And now for the actual cutting of the cake.
Who wants cake?
As you can see, this cake is very delicious. If you want some yourself, I'm sorry to tell you it's all gone. Besides, it's been more than half a year by now. I don't think it would taste that good anymore. Everyone gathered at the table to have a great feast. Rhiannon loves Alice and Wonderland, as you can see by her holding this plate, with artwork from Lewis Carroll's book, from 1865, where the artwork was done by John Tenniel. The plates with the artwork were handed out to guests. Then bowls with the artwork as well. Then napkins with the rabbit. Then drink napkins with Alice. There were even paper cups that folded out to look like actual tea cups, as well as saucers to match. Here is a friend holding a bowl of the late rabbit. Oh look, she's the rabbit too. Rhiannon just couldn't resist trying on a friend's sunglasses. And here is Uriel just being his usual self, playing with his food. He definitely is into his role being the Mad Hatter character. And finally, here is a picture of the happy couple. They are definitely having a great time on this special day. The bride and groom then got into a friend's car, and drove the 5-minute drive over to the Kananaskis Lodge. As you can see from these few pictures here, it is a beautiful resort nestled deep into the Rocky Mountains. There are hotels. There are ski hills. There are golf courses, baseball fields, hiking trails, and all sorts of activities a person can get themselves involved in. It is truly a beautiful location, as you can see from the photos for yourselves. Here are some photos of the bride and groom that were taken there on this wonderful day. Don't they look just so adorable together? Before leaving this location, Let's have one more panoramic look at this area before moving on to the next location of the day. This camera doesn't do the area justice. This cliff is very deep, and this valley is very wide. To see it in person in real life is absolutely breathtaking. At this point, two of the guests had to go home, because they have small children, and it was getting to be late afternoon. Rhiannon, Uriel, his mother, and Mitchell pressed on to their final destination of the day. They drove 42 more minutes down Highway 40 going south, until they arrived at the glacial waters of the upper and lower Kananaskis Lakes. These are the highest mountains in this part of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. They first went to the upper lake on the left. Then they are going to go to the lower lake later on, which is on the right. In this photo you can see on the far right that the crystal turquoise waters come from the ice on the mountains. Here now are some photos of the upper Kananaskis Lake. It is truly beautiful and breathtaking out there. Rhiannon and Uriel lucked out this day, because right after taking these lake photos a lightning storm broke out. Luckily they were heading home by then. At those altitudes, a storm like that is very frightening. Here are a few photos of the bride and groom at the upper level of the lakes. Oh! Look! It's a little chipmunk. It's saying hello. This little creature actually walked up to about 1 foot from the bride. This is interesting, since her name is Rhiannon and Uriel Morningstar. Because that means Great White Queen. In other words, Snow White. And this little forest creature seems to really like her. After these photos, everyone got back into their cars and drove the 6 minutes it took to get to the lower lake of the two Kananaskis Lakes. Here are some photos of the lower lake. This cliff is much higher than what the camera makes you think it is. The mountains seem to just go on forever and ever over the beautiful lake. And finally here are 2 photos of the bride and groom at this location. This last picture, Rhiannon and Uriel are thinking of putting into a 32-inch frame, and placing it somewhere in their home. It is absolutely beautiful, and captures the moment of the day. Don't you agree? After a very long day, it is now time to head home. The drive back out of the mountains back to Cochrane will take just over 1.5 hours. They have to drive all the way back north up Highway 40, until they get back to Highway 1. Then they have to take Highway 1 east, until they get to Highway 22. Then they have to take Highway 22 going north, until they get home back in Cochrane, Alberta. As you can see by this photo, the bride and groom are exhausted after their very long day. They have been up since 4:30 a.m. after all. Uriel, being a heart patient, has swollen up a little with water retention. Don't worry, after a bit of rest he will be fine. It's just his body's way of saying he's had enough. Once they got home and rested for a bit, they went outside to meet a few neighbors that have not seen them yet in their outfits. These are 3 photos were taken outside their apartment on the front porch by a friend. It was starting to get late, and across the street was a very special restaurant where the bride and groom were going to have a very romantic dinner together. It is called The Boot. It's a cute, tiny, cozy authentic Italian restaurant, tucked away in the corner of a strip mall. It is so cozy in fact, that it needs reservations, and only has very few tables in it. but trust me when I say it is well worth it." Uriel, being the gentleman that he is, pulls a seat for his bride to sit down. He then seats himself. They order some samosas. They are made with Prosecco wine and blood oranges from Italy. They are so good, you can't have just one. Uriel makes a toast to his lovely bride. Even others in the restaurant joined in, and complimented them on their beautiful clothing. A kid that was there, was so excited to see Uriel, and know, and tell his parents, "Hey look, it's the Mad Hatter." Everyone was cheerful and polite to the Vow Renewed couple, congratulating them. They made their order that they already prepared at home before they arrived from their restaurant's menu. It was to be a 7-course meal. Expensive, but worth it. For this night they were to be feasting like a king and queen. The kitchen was busy making both their meals as well as the rest of the customers. The first course was a salad called a caprese salad. In it was mozzarella cheese, tomatoes, oregano, olive oil, and a balsamic glaze. The second course was an appetizer. It was called tagliatelle toscano. It was made of numerous Italian cold cuts of meat, and many various cheeses, served on a slab of wood. The third course was a soup. It was the soup of the day. In it was potatoes, exotic mushrooms, real cream, different seasonings, and Italian spices. The fourth course was a pasta. It was called penne primavera. In it was various vegetables, provolone cheese, penne noodles, and a balsamic glaze. The fifth course was the main course. It was called polpette. It was beef meatballs, zesty homemade tomato sauce which is the owner's grandmother's secret recipe, seasoned potato wedges, and some fresh just baked bread with butter. Here is a photo of the bride and groom, enjoying their feast. It was taken by a stranger, at another table, who just couldn't help herself. She thought the couple was just so adorable. She just had to take the photo. The sixth course was dessert. It was called tiramisu. It was in a jar and made with muscadine cream, biscotti, espresso coffee, and cocoa powder. The final and seventh course was gelato. It was called tartufo affogato. It is made with Italian chocolate ice cream, and then drowned 1/3 in a bowl of cold espresso coffee. What a wonderful meal they had, with so many amazing flavors. Food this good is not an everyday thing for the two of them. They truly enjoyed this romantic and magical moment together. At the end of the meal, they joined hands across the table, and exchanged intimate words that only they will ever know with one another, about their love for one another, and how much they enjoyed this joyous day. Now after a very, very long day, it was time to go home and sleep in the next day. Their eyes were heavy. Their feet were sore. Their muscles hurt. If you asked them if it was worth it, their answer would be, "Oh hells yes." Even though Rhiannon and Uriel told guests they didn't need or require gifts for the wedding, A friend from one of Rhiannon's groups decided to buy them gifts anyway. They bought her this nice purse, and him these nice headphones. As we mentioned earlier in the video, Rhiannon suffers from many different mental illnesses, and it's lifelong and ongoing. A few months after the wedding, her bipolar put Rhiannon back into a very deep depression with very high anxiety. She went to her support group one day, and they thought her mental state was bad enough to take her to an urgent care center. She ended up later on that day taken by medical staff to the psych ward at the Rocky View Hospital in Calgary. She was now in a different city, and Uriel could not go and visit her. She was all alone. After just under a week's time, she was sent home again. In October, Rhiannon woke up one day with very severe chest pains and shortness of breath. She went to the urgent care center in Cochrane. She was then sent by ambulance to the Foothills Hospital in Calgary for more testing. After about 2 days of hospital, she became stranded in Calgary with no way back home to Cochrane. She had to disturb friends very late at night to come and get her. That same night, she collapsed so hard the tables, chairs, and dishes in the kitchen cupboards shook and bounced off the floor. It made a loud bang even the neighbors heard. Rhiannon was out cold and unconscious. Uriel called an ambulance, and she was taken back to Calgary again. After a day, she had become stranded again with no way back home to Cochrane. She had to plead with emergency social services for a taxi back home to Cochrane. Because of constantly getting stranded in Calgary, the many medical trips they both had for both their physical and mental issues, it was getting to be too much. As much as they both loved Cochrane, they agreed they had no choice but to live in Calgary. So they transferred to a different complex in Calgary owned by the same company they were renting from now. Their apartment manager helped them out in finding a nice place in a safer neighborhood, since Calgary is a very big city of 1.3 million people. They lucked out with a very large 2-bedroom with dishwasher, and even a view of the mountains from their balcony. The place even has laundry on every floor, as well as garbage chutes so you don't have to go out in the cold of winter to take out your garbage. While they were in the middle of moving, on October 19th, Rhiannon had a severe gallbladder attack. Earl moved what he could on his own, but much was still left at the old apartment. Rhiannon was rushed off to hospital. Because of this, they almost lost everything that they had owned. Uriel's mother had to come down from Edmonton to help him get the rest of their things from the old apartment. They ended up having to pay for the move twice because of this. It cost a lot more to move than they had originally planned and saved for. On October 21st, Rhiannon had her surgery. It failed. One of the surgical clamps was defective, and bile started filling her abdomen. They had to do another procedure to put in a new clamp, as well as a temporary stent to relieve some of the pressure. This stent was then removed with another procedure in December. Because of the bile buildup, Rhiannon almost died. They had to use 3 drainage tubes to get it all out. What should have been a day surgery, quickly became an entire month's stay in hospital for Rhiannon. It was a very rough road for her and family. On February 20th, Uriel will be going to get his problem fixed, that in a way, caused the vow renewal. They couldn't be intimate for many years because his private parts no longer worked. It started in 2003, when a surgery went very wrong leaving him with nerve damage, and it progressively got worse till they stopped working about 2 years ago. Rhiannon had her issues too, but they worked it out as you saw previously in the video. Well, now on this day, he will be getting penile implants. They last for about 15 years. It is 2 inflatable cylinders that go on each side of his privates, as well as a pump that goes between his boys. Then there is a saline reservoir that goes up in the abdomen. After this surgery and recovery of many months, Uriel and Rhiannon will be able to be together on demand whenever they wish. It should bring them closer together in those ways, and enrich their marriage once again. Rhiannon has been trying to have kids for over 21 years. Sadly, she has never been able to have any. Her body gives her pain all month long. She has much heavier than normal monthly flows. She also has PCOS. In her family there is a higher risk for both cervical and uterine cancer. So her and her doctors decided it's time to take all of that out. She will be having a laparoscopic hysterectomy on May 13th. Because of all their health issues, Uriel and Rhiannon are forced to live in Calgary. Rents in Calgary are double of most other cities. For a decent apartment, you are easily spending around $1,500 a month. That is not even for anything fancy. Just your bare basics living space. Calgary is a city of over 1.3 million people. There are lots of murders, drugs, gangs, shootings, and other various severe crimes. Calgary also has a higher cost of living for food, clothing, utilities, transportation, or whatever else. With both of their health issues, and now numerous surgeries as well, they have no choice but to live there, even though they loved living in Cochrane. Calgary is the only place and way for them to be healthy and survive. At least they can go see their specialists and doctors, and go straight home in the same city. The upside is great health, and a possibly longer life. The downside is poverty, more dangerous streets than Cochrane, and lots of airplane and traffic noise pollution. They will just have to get used to it. It is their life now.
Rhiannon and Morningstar here. I wrote down what I want to say so I wouldn't forget anything. When Uriel and I met in 2005, I was at an extreme low point in my life and no longer cared what happened to me, good or bad. I was suicidal, to be honest, and was planning on ending my life that night. When I saw him across the club, it was like a beacon through my gloom. I talked to friends about him, asking who he was. Their answer was to drag me over to him and park me on the stage next to him. Some part of me knew that he was the one I had been unknowingly looking for all my life. With Uriel, I felt complete. From the very start of our relationship, we have been through several ups and downs, mentally and physically. It has torn us apart and brought us back together over and over again. No matter what, even if we need a break to calm down, we always come back to each other, talk, and work through anything that gets thrown at us. In the beginning, my family was afraid that Uriel would hurt me because of our 15-year age difference. In all reality, I've been the one hurting him more times than I can count. Even in my worst moments, he has always been there for me. It is I who need to learn to be there more for him than I already am. Many have noticed that I've called him my angel. That is because even in my worst times, he's been there to save me. A light cutting through a darkness I thought would never end. In all honesty, there are times he's literally saved my life. Most don't know this, but in the 15 years we've been married, we've actually broken up 3 times, mostly due to my mental health instabilities. When I've left, he chases after me and fights to save the good things we have. When I break down, he will stay up all night and day to be there for me. Many of my family and friends say to me that he has changed me, that I'm not who I used to be before him. To them, all I ever have to say is that Uriel, all he's done is allow me to truly be myself, without fear of rejection or judgment. He has helped me grow by supporting me through whatever dreams I've had, no matter how silly they ever have been. He lifted me up when others have pushed me down. and I do everything in my power to be that person for him as well. Over the years, I've learned that there are 3 C's that are the most important for a relationship: communication, compromise, and compassion. I strive more and more each day to be the wife he deserves, just as he is the husband I have dreamed of, without losing who I am, of course. In a relationship, you need to fight as hard as you love. Never hold anything back, good or bad. If you keep everything pent up and pretend everything is fine, eventually you will explode when enough becomes enough. Then the simplest, most minor thing can end what may have otherwise been a lifetime of love. It took quite a while for me to learn this. I had a relationship I left because I didn't like a girl the guy was talking to or how he was talking to her. Instead of telling him how I felt and discussing the issue, I simply got up one day and left. Looking back now, I know that was absolutely the worst thing to do in that moment. I let my resentments build up and bubble over. As silly as it may sound, the best advice I have is to not let the toilet seat or the toothpaste cap be what shatters your world together. Talk always, fight often, love forever. Remember what brought you together.
Hi there, I'm Uriel Morningstar. If it sounds like I'm reading a script right now, it's because I am. I planned out well what I wanted to say here to you, the listener. In January of 2005, I met Rhiannon at a time where I was at a very all-time low. Many things were going on in my life in a very negative way. I was financially ruined because I owed money to the government at that time. My reputation was ruined by an ex-relationship in such a way that I couldn't repair. It affected me in almost every relationship from then on. I had lost a young child forever due to circumstances far beyond my control, even though I went to court and fought. I was at a point in my life where I lost respect of friends, family, and almost everyone I knew, all because of a rumor that wasn't true. I was just forced out of a relationship by my father a few weeks previous because of that rumor and that lie, with someone I actually loved and cared about very much. Losing that girl forever. The night I met Rhiannon at the bar, I was actually planning on drinking and then later on that night, taking my own life. But as you all know already, that did not happen. I met Rhiannon that night and my life changed forever. I know what I'm about to say might sound to some of you like too much information, but it's important in getting the point across. The night Rhiannon followed me home, and in all seriousness, she still has not gone home once in the 15 years since that day we met. Anyways, we went home that night, and it was not like two people who just met. It was not like a one-night stand. It was not like two people dating. From the time we left the bar, we were already acting like we were a couple. We held hands like a couple, we kissed like a couple, we talked like a couple, and we even made love that night like a couple that has known each other forever. Somehow we both just knew we'd be together forever, ever since we laid eyes on each other. We both had addiction problems at that time in our lives. We both were severely broken in spirit. We both have given up. It was like we were meant to find each other on that exact day, almost like we made a promise in a pre-existence of some kind, or some past life or something, to meet at this precise moment. It was like we knew. I'm proud of Rhiannon very much. The day she met me, she quit hard drugs cold turkey. She had the odd drink, even though she was an alcoholic, but she trusted me to monitor her and cut her off when I felt that she had enough. We respected each other in that way. Rhiannon gave me a reason to be a better person, and a reason to live. Where past relationships kept putting me down, saying, "Cut your hair, get a real job," Rhiannon encouraged me to be my true self. Dress as me, wear whatever I want to wear, act as me, no compromising. She believed in me and my talents, and over my many years, she helped me get further in my dream of being a musician than anyone else ever has. We built a home studio together. She, as a writer, even helped me with her opinions on songs that I wrote. When I felt like giving up and quitting, she just pushed me to keep going. A hug, a passionate kiss, a few other intimate ways of reminding me that I'm loved and I should keep going. Many people tell me I can do better. They have judged Rhiannon very much over the years, but that is because they don't truly know her. All that they see is that she's got bipolar, she's got borderline, anxiety, and other health issues, and that she can often really piss me off greatly, or sometimes almost ruin my life with her actions due to her mental illness. I myself am a deep thinker, a man of, kind of like Spock on Star Trek, a man with an IQ over 150, and I'm very intelligent. So when I look at Rhiannon and her actions, I analyze them of if her actions are her own, was it her mental illness, because of having a bad day, or whatever other stimulus of the day may have caused it. I only get angry at her if her actions were intentional. It's not her fault that she has these other mental issues, so I separate them. I know the real Rhiannon, and she is a very sweet, kind, loving woman. It is just all the other things that make her hard to live with sometimes. Where most guys would leave and would have left after a severe depressive or manic episode, I talk to her about it. I see where her head is at. Then I give a decision on how I feel about it, based on the actual facts. A great example of this is fear. When Rhiannon and I met, she was afraid of many things because of past traumas. Often she would lash out at me in a rage because she wasn't quite sure what was happening between us. But now, after 15 years, that never happens, not even once. The walls are down and we have complete trust. In 2007, we went bankrupt because she could no longer work and was transitioning to a disability. We lived for many months on only one income, my income, and we barely made ends meet. Many partners would leave a spouse over a silly thing like money. It's happened to me. Myself, I knew this was something she needed, and it's something she had to do. I stayed by her side as we fought through it. Eventually things became okay again, and in 2008, we even went on a week-long vacation out in the Rocky Mountains. In 2009, a doctor had very severely over-medicated Rhiannon with psych medications. She became so manic, she didn't even know what she was doing. She didn't even know her own name. She was not herself. Because of this, she got the idea I was better off without her. And she left for no reason at all, didn't even say anything to me, just left. We lost our apartment, we lost our belongings, and being by myself, I couldn't afford the bills or the rent. So I ended up in a psych ward because losing her was so hard for me. I felt like part of me had died. And where most people would move on, I fought for her. I was at her door every day trying to talk to her. And police were called on me many times by the people she was living with, but I didn't care. I still fought for the one I truly loved because I knew her headspace was the problem, not her. And she just wasn't thinking clearly. And so I fought for her, and I always have. Eventually we spent a night in a hotel talking. She felt she at least owed me some closure if we were going to break up. And after talking for many hours that night, we didn't really sleep. She realized she had no reason to leave. Nothing happened. Nothing was wrong. And she was just in this mental state and didn't know what she was doing. So we got back together, we got a new apartment, and we worked it out. She spent some time getting help with her mental issues, and eventually she was stable again. In 2011, Rhiannon's mother passed away, and with that, a piece of her died. And I knew her briefly, and it was hard for me too. To this day, she's not been the same after that. As much as I love her, sometimes I've had to practice tough love, doing what's best for Rhiannon, even if it's going to hurt her a little bit. I've had to, for a while after her mom's death, call the police to haul her off to hospital so she wouldn't harm herself. In that same moment, even though she was angry at me for it, I'd still visit her every day, without fail, in hospitals, until she got better. I encouraged her to cry, scream, sometimes even punch me literally, to deal with the pain of losing her mother. It was tough, helping her through that, but we did do it together. We also talked, and I found out from her that she's lost a lot of friends to deaths, overdoses, suicides, other things over the years as well, and that was hard for her too. I let her talk about those events as if it means staying up to 5 in the morning. The pain's real, and it needs to come out. Without openness, without honesty, without trust, without the feeling of safety, what do you truly have in a relationship? Is it not more than just sex, someone there when you're lonely, or helping you pay the bills? They are a person that you made a promise to, a deep, spiritual, and soulful promise. Together we have always, without fail, listened to one another in the toughest of times, when everyone else around us is just running away. It's what a marriage should be, has to be, and what makes it work. In a way, it's healing, and even at times magical in nature. Seeing the losses that she had, I bought her 2 very special cats, the spotted Egyptian ones that we now have, and they're about 6 years old now. There's Mia Kepri and Nefertari Sidi, and they've brought her much joy. They are expensive cats, yes, but I didn't care. You can't put a price on making the person you love and care most about truly happy again. No, of course not. Rhiannon and I have been through a lot in our 15 years together. Relapses with drugs, trying to stay clean off of substances, traumas, surgeries with her, surgeries with me. We've been near homeless about 3 times. We've been through poverty, hunger, declining health problems, and all sorts of challenges that we go through on a day-to-day basis. But we're still here together today. So, to end this, the best advice I can give any couple out there struggling is this. 1, think about what made you love them to begin with. 2, in times of conflict, think of the times that were unforgettably great with that partner. 3, the saying of let them leave and they'll come back, that's actually a fact. Try it, see what happens. And 4, the best thing you can say when someone is hurting is to actually shut up and just listen. So I hope this video has inspired you, if you're a couple, that together you can get through anything.